just listen.
You are getting those stress fractures and you're getting that chronic tendinitis and that. It is linked to incorrect technique, incorrect mechanics.
To start off with, and this is genuinely something that's been sitting with me a long time, is Synergy Holistix. I mean, from where I first came to, I think I was 16, to now, it's amazing what you've achieved. Can you talk a little bit about?
Are we live now? Is this?
It's been live for a while. Yeah.
The whole time. Okay, hi everybody. Firstly, I'm just want to start off and say amazing to see how we've reconnected. And I think when people meet, I know this young man from when he was a cricketer, an avid cricketer, and a top fast bowler, and we were just catching up about that, so I wasn't aware that we were still on air, but hi everybody. So I started off as a chiropractor. Initially when I was at school, I wanted to do orthopedic medicine, and then because of my passion for cricket like you and music, I didn't want to qualify till I was 40 and then go into orthopedics. And I had a role model, a guy called Lawrence Mars. I think your dad knew him. He was a well-known osteopath. He was a huge role model for me about healing, and that's how that all started. And then chiropractics in South Africa existed. I looked at other options to go overseas. Couldn't get there. My dad couldn't afford to get me there for music at Berkeley, so the chiropractics helped. But I knew that it wasn't just going to be a classical chiropractor where, like when guys look at chiropractics, guys think Rick and Plick, click, click in and out. And there was a pull almost to how I wanted to shift it. So that's how that started. And then through the journey of being a chiropractor, when I qualified in 2001, 2002, was to have this vision of a team. When you work by yourself, it's nice, but you get lonely and you want a team. And then through, as you and I were talking about earlier now with my talk last week, the right guys at the right time come on the journey. Everything's about the right time. It's not by coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. And then when I built this up with the right people, the right healers joined us. And that's what was the genesis of Synergy Holistix, where the name came up. And then Marco, who was a student of mine like you, also a patient of mine, who's a good cricketer as well at Northcliffe, he joined me. Claudia Dos Santos was the biokineticist that Shane Berger, a colleague of yours, sent to me, and she came to work with me. And then other biokineticists came, and when we did the move here, in this place where I grew up, I bought this from my folks, this was my house, I grew up.
Oh, really?
Nikki, this is my parents' room. We used to play cricket out there, me and my butts, and soccer. So this is where it's just a nice nostalgic return to where my folks moved to Cape Town. My sister's there, my butts are in New York. And as that's happened, the team has now moved on. So Synergy here has been almost 2 years in October. As you know, some of the guys are here. You've met some of the team. And it's evolving. The right people come, who fits, who doesn't. Some stay, some go. And that's what the progress is about. And that's how we're here. That's what Synergy started.
And you guys cover everything, because I know you do sports injuries, and you got the biokinetics here, and then you also got the mind side of things and the spiritual side of things with the life coach and the cranial sacral therapist. Can you talk a bit about them?
So Nick, the musculoskeletal was always the primary emphasis, which was with me, biokinetics, physio. There's in a lot of that area, there's a lot of congeniality, like physios, chiros, a lot of people have conflict. I personally, with my journey of 20 years now, I get on great with physios, I get on great with biokineticists, osteopaths, chiros. It's what works for you. Some people would prefer to go to Marco than me, they don't like my technique. Some people prefer dry needling. So in the realm of musculoskeletal, where that's what we're talking about from that perspective, there's different ways of treating it. Some people just would want to go to the GP and give them anti-inflammatories and muscle relaxants. As we know that the whole philosophy is now more the root as opposed to symptoms, not just treating symptoms. In some places, people can only exist with medicine. And where medicine's moving now and shifting with movement, yoga, Pilates, all those brilliant realms, aquatherapy from the States, Australia, a lot of guys that are first world, that's where sports medicine is going, which I'm sure we'll cover just now. And then the other people that have joined me, Peter Fagan, NLP, trauma life coach, therapist. She was at school with me as my standard 6, which was grade 8 for you. When I was matric, she joined us on the journey. Kim, who's just recently joined us with craniosacral. So they're the mind element. Ali's just joined us now, who's Pilates and body stress relief. And then we're seeing amalgamation that I've seen personally in my own journey, where you have to look at emotional and physical. And as you were discussing when you watched our talk last week, how we're linking up the two, not just symptoms. Why is someone inflamed? Why is someone getting cancer? Prof. Mataro, Dr. Mataro said, why are these things happening? Well, two people will have one journey. Why does one person get better in 3 sessions and one takes 10 sessions, or one doesn't get better? So there's definitely a genetic link, a DNA link, and that's what it's not just about coming, click, click, dry needle, tape, anti-inflammatory, 3,000 physio sessions. We need to understand why this is happening to each person. Here, personally, we also have the aesthetic side, which is just an adjunct, because that's a form of healing. You know, someone needs to have their nails done, waxing, facials, aesthetics. Aesthetics is important. And I remember when I was at varsity in diagnostics, our lecturer, who was a huge role model for me, Dr. Lazarus, she said, you know, everyone worries about a pimple and the skin, but they forget about internal, if there's silent cancer. You know, because we're so worried about vanity, we're so worried about how we look, or receding hairline, or, you know, like it's got black hairs, or like that's the aesthetic of it, the element. So it's important, because confidence is how you look, you know, and if you feel good, that's the whole body, mind, soul that you were talking about.
Okay. So a lot of things has been said about the contemporary or the conventional way of doing medicine and treatment that you touched on now with the medication and things and painkillers, anti-inflammatories, but there's such a divide, and this is something I struggle with, because it's either or, and I think the world is working like that at the moment. It's black or white, you this side or that side, but how do those two go together? Where is the place for the conventional medicine, and when is it not the right time to do that?
It's an excellent question. I think that it's very much individually and perspective based. So some people, and even what we spoke about on that talk about depression and anxiety and that, there is a need for psychotropic drugs. There is a need where someone needs to go on mood stabilizer drugs. You know, there is a need if someone is heavy epileptic, he's got to take anti-seizure medication. You know what I'm saying? He can go, he can do meditation, breathing, yoga and that. If the oak has a seizure in the middle of a car and crashes and kills someone, what are you going to say, that he never did his yoga that day? So it's a tricky one. So primary base is to try and go as natural as you can, you know, and that's a big thing, because pharmaceuticals are huge. Pharmaceuticals are very powerful companies, you know. When do you need an anti-inflammatory? It can be life-changing. If somebody's chronic pain every day of their life, you know, and what's coming through now is cannabis. That's a big thing now. So you, as I said in the talk, you have a conflict. You have the cardiologist, the heart guy, that says can't take anti-inflammatories because it's dangerous to the heart, and the guy is got cholesterol and he's high blood pressure. And then you got the orthopedic guy who says you've got bone and bone, your arthritis, you can't walk, you need to take Celebrex or Coxia. So it's very much individually based. There is a need for it. They can be life-changing. We have guys that are crippled in pain, suicidal in pain. It affects their marriage, affects their life when you're so sore with pain. That yes, when there is a need for cataflam or Robaxin, it's great. And sometimes medicinal, natural, allopathic or holistic doesn't always work, you know. You can come and I can do 10 manipulations of the guy, and they can see Mark for dry needling, and they can see Claudia for bar, and like he's so sore that he's got to go and have prednisone and cortisone from the specialist, and he's got to have a Voltaren injection. And sometimes the mirage of the two is good initially, but not to mask it. And sometimes guys get that wrong. They become addicted to painkillers and analgesics and that. When an analgesic is needed, great, but try everything to go as holistic as you can. And that's where you're talking about where that whole black versus white thing, because some guys are hurtful. They don't want to just take 6 months to get better. They want instant relief, instant gratification. Give me my painkillers, give me my drugs, cool. That's fine, but are you really fixing the root? You know? And when it's needed, it's needed. You remember with your back, stress fracture, lower spine, you saw. When you saw, you saw. And it can affect many aspects. It could be your fine. Nothing like raw and live.
Yeah. So sorry about that. So you were just saying the merging of conventional medicine and what would you call the other one? Holistic, natural.
So like allopathic, you know, the two. There's a dichotomy of medicine, because there's like you've got medicinal, which is must be science based, and that's, you know. And a lot of specialists in that say, well, what is body stress relief, and what is body talk, and what is Pilates, and you know. And the irony is that some of them that have a stigma, even with us as chiropractors. When we were growing up, I come from a very medicinal background. My dad was an orthodontist, my uncle's an orthopedic surgeon, pharmacist. you dare not go to chiropractor when you're growing up. You
Yeah.
really don't. I mean, how dare you? And that's changed a lot now, because we're seeing a lot, even with me on my 20 years now, like when you say to a certain specialist, and some specialists are still dead against it because of the stigma, but when you work with orthopedic guys, they're cool that you're seeing a biokinetics or chiropractic. That's much more new age medicine. And the latest topic is functional medicine. But if so the old days, growing up in those days, it was very much like, it must be this way, boom. And still today, there are still very old school thinking, you don't see a chiropractor, you go to physio, etc. And a lot of guys will tell you that. I've had lots of patients say, geez, I was told never to come to a chiropractor, he's going to break my neck, he's going to cause a stroke. It's all technique and training in that, and we've worked very hard in the profession of chiropractics to reverse that stigma. In terms of the new age or holistic realm of therapies, there's many ways to look at it. Is it allopathic? Is it natural? How do you want to see? Is it conventional? Conventional's the one way, the medicinal route, and that. But like we are accepted by medical aids, for example. You see a chiropractor, you can claim back from Medicaid. That's huge. Homeopathy, you can claim back from Medicaid. Naturopathy, you can claim back. Osteopathy, we've shifted a lot of that now, where it's not just about go see a GP, take medicine, see an orthopedic surgeon. You only have an option of doing surgery, etc.
One thing I've also picked up on is that a lot of therapists, in whichever field they are starting to branch out. I know with the Health Professions Council of South Africa, it's quite strict. You're a chiropractor, you can't do anything else, can't claim to be anything else on your title or anything. But a lot of guys are starting to become similar to you, holistic healers, in that they are trying to incorporate the mind side to their physical therapy, or vice versa. Is that the pathway we're going? You think that's the way it should be going?
So look, there is a lot of red tape. Firstly, just to correct you, we allied health professions.
Yeah.
Claudia is biokinetics as their Health Professions Council. So Peter and Claudia with Health Professions Council, we allied. So it's us, homeopathy, acupuncture, massage.
Is Peter with the Health Professions? She's not allied?
No,
Okay.
she's Health Professions.
Right.
So they are strict, and even with us with allied health professions, if I'm going to work on you and you do ICD-10 coding and you claim back, you're claiming back as a chiropractor. I'm not saying like submit your invoice to medical aid to Discovery, for example, and they say, so Wayne saw you as a chiropractor, but he did emotional healing on you. I'm not qualified as that. Even though I'll pick it up intuitively and we'll delve into that. My profession and that thing up there is as a chiropractor. That's what I'm registered at. So that's my premise of practice. And when I need to refer you, I will refer you to a pedo or body stress relief and that. And then you have to have your own volition to do that as a patient. So, and then what's happening now is, for example, GPs, a lot of them are doing homeopathy on the side because they don't want to just treat with antibiotics if it weakens the immune system and if it's viral. They don't want to just use antibiotics, then they will do that on the side, or acupuncture. And that's beautiful that there's this whole overflow and this whole congenial connection and synergy, which I love that word, as you know, where guys do have that synergy between guys, where they can say, it's out of my scope, I can't fix this, I need to refer you, etc. And that's a problem where guys don't treat in their scope. They often treat out of their scope, And even in chiropractics, like guys will try to fix something where there's no way they can fix it. And then they must have the temerity to say, listen, I can't help you. And they must have the ethics to say you need to be referred. And same thing, if it's a physio, a dentist, whatever, you've got to work in your scope. And a lot of guys don't.
A lot of them are quite similar though. So Claudia, for example, with the biokinetics, it's physical rehab and prehab and therapy. But if a patient comes to her and he's got a tight hamstring, she might have a sports massage short course that she's done and just rub out. And then the reason I bring that up is because a biokineticist I know in Cape Town was quite upset with someone that you referred me to because they tend to practice outside of their scope. But this guy was qualified as a physical therapist overseas, but in South Africa you can't register as one. So he was doing biokinetics, and he was registered as a biokineticist, but he was doing physical therapy work, and they had quite a problem with that. I don't know if should that be a problem?
Just obviously not to mention names. So the bio was upset that I referred you to someone that treated out of his scope.
No, the bio was upset that this person just works out of scope. But
and
this guy. So
and this, you can tell me off air, but this other person is what field?
Biokineticist as well.
And a buyer down there said that this buyer is doing not what he should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's doing physical therapy work, which he studied overseas. Yeah.
So that's a discussion you need to have with Claudia and physio. Because like with me, I'm chilled. I don't have any apathy, but I know that physios and buyers, there's a lot of conflict there because they do treat from the same pie. But I'm not qualified to ask you about that. That's the physios and buyers. They can do it. Same thing with us. Like we can't prescribe medicine. We're not allowed to. You got to work in your scope. And that's a very, very thing. Like guys that do injections or you must work in your scope. You know what I'm saying? So it's very interesting and that's up to each patient and the intuition with the therapist. And there are guys that do treat out their scope. Same thing with us. So we mainly specialize in manipulation and adjustment, we call it. When you go to a dentist or a GP that clicks your neck and that, have they done the right courses? Are they just doing it off the cuff? And then we get lumbered with that. So, choose the pun. So it's got to work for whoever must work in your scope. In any field of thing. I'm sure that happens in orthopedics or analgesics or anesthetists. You're getting interventional radiology now where guys are doing procedures now, and sometimes they get upset because it's very complicated. It's complicated and complex. But the guys that, when they have their degrees in that, if they're comfortable and they back their brand, then they must work in their brand. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So just from my insular perspective, I'm not a psychologist. We did it in second, third year. You know what I mean? But if I pick up psychogenic and that, I will refer to a psychologist or PETA, NLP, life coach. It's not my field. I have a passion for it, but I haven't studied. I haven't done a course. And if I pick up something intuitive, I'll chat about it, but I'll say it's best you go speak to a professional. As an example, same with nutrition. I haven't studied that or dietetics. I know a bit about it, but I'd rather send you to Kelly, who was on the talk, or they're qualified. Dr. Matara, who's a cardiologist, with a passion for endocrinology. You got to know where your limits are. And that's a big thing because that leads to danger if you don't know where your limits are.
Do you feel comfortable speaking about those things from your opinion? Because I've got quite a few questions on things like the adrenal fatigue and things. It's not your field, but I know you are clued up about it.
I'm happy to chat about it with pleasure. I can tell you from a perspective, but obviously it's in no way coming because I'm a specialist. I'm not an endocrinologist. I'm not a general practitioner. I can base it for what I've seen clinically in practice here, and I can base it personally. I'm happy to talk about personal, my journey, why that all opened up for me.
Okay, cool. And then you mentioned antibiotics as well. So I've just been dealing with an infection in my tooth or gums or something, and decided I'm not going on any medication, trying to get it sorted out naturally as possible. And today I took my first antibiotic because it was too much, and I think sometimes there's a space for something like that. So is that what you were saying with the painkillers as well and the antidepressants? Is some things need it and some things...
So when it's needed, absolutely. Antibiotics, phenomenal when they are used correctly. Problem is I think a lot of guys just prescribe willy-nilly. But if you think about the tooth and the anatomy, if you don't take it and you've got an abscess there, it can cause damage to the joint, which it's a type of joint with the tooth is. You can have nerve damage. It can eat into the bone. It can get into the bloodstream. It can get into the brain, sinus, ear, eye. So when there's a need for antibiotic, of course, and you'll be better in 4 or 5 days if it's been diagnosed correctly. If it is just an abscess and that, so you try the salt water, the washing, etc., etc., etc. But if an infection is needed, there's a need for it. There's a need for Miprodol. You know what I'm saying? So people often confuse that. Like when you try go the holistic realm or this whole new age medicine route, when it's not working, of course.
Cool. So I want to keep the spotlight on you a little bit longer personally, because I see you as someone that's really mastered their craft, right? So I've been to hundreds of physios, bios, chiros, and almost every time I've kind of left disappointed, not 100% diagnosed. I've had some weird problems, I'll admit, but you're the only person that could immediately pick up what's wrong and fix it and fix it long term. So I want you to, what would you attribute your success to and your ability to master your craft?
Sure, thank you very much. So I remember from varsity, certain things stuck out with me at varsity in those wild days, the jawling, the partying, the tequila nights. Liverpool not winning anything, being nailed by all the United guys. I don't think you were affiliated to Liverpool. So the one mistake guys do is when they leave varsity, they think they know everything in medicine, in any field perhaps, and nothing can be clinical experience. And I can tell you to this day, and I mean this absolutely with sincerity, 20 years later, there's not a day go by here when I'm not challenged. Anyone that tells you that they've mastered their craft in medicine is dangerous. They can be a surgeon that never ever must the guy say he's mastered his craft. It's fine for him to perfect certain techniques, but even an ENT surgeon, ear, nose and throat surgeon, he can do 3,000 tonsillectomies. He'll see one, and I heard of a case the other day where a kid died because they didn't stop the bleeding. And this guy was in his 60s. He was a top ENT. It can happen. So never must one become glib and think, I've mastered my profession. So that's it. So that's the one thing about that. So for me, I'm always learning, trying to improve my techniques. I'm not perfect. Misdiagnosed. You try perfect it, etc. But no one must ever in the healing profession particularly think that they know it all. That's number one. Number two, success. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. I think it comes with trying to be in the moment and challenge yourself. And like techniques that I've developed me personally work for me, that I work for other people, like I said. And same with Marco. Like, we'll have patients come to me, they prefer Marco's technique. I think the reason what I think with this type of thing is it must work for you. You know, like I don't do dry needling, we were trained with it. I prefer Marco to do it. The adjustment, the soft tissue is more my area that I work with. And the same thing, some chiros are, particularly chiropractic, some guys are brilliant with babies, pediatrics, some guys are better with geriatrics, some guys are post-rehabilitation. You've got to harness what works with you. All the healing stuff that you spoke about, the intuition, is on the lateral side. But I'll have a guy coming in who's got torn ligaments in his shoulder, and he's an avid squash player and that. He's not interested in intuition. He wants to get his shoulder fixed. So I will be that chiropractor that he's come for. So the other stuff happens on the side where I pick up that emotional stuff or autoimmune stuff, etc. They've come to me through whatever referrals, and then we can delve into that from that side. But I think that it's a daily focus to try and improve yourself in what you do. And that's, for me, it's like to keep bettering yourself and improving on techniques, never thinking you know it all.
So that could be applied. You said the healing profession, but that could be applied to sports as well. And what it sounds to me like you're saying is, as soon as your ego gets in the way and too big, and you think you know it all, and you think you've made it, and you're the best at what you do, is when you start failing. Is that correct?
Yeah, so sure, that's a big topic, ego. So of course, I mean, in any field of life, and whether you speak to accountants and they miss tax, or engineers or architects, pilots, pilot can do 3,000 flights. He can never be glib about it. Like he's got to remain in the moment and stay focused, because it's one lack of focus. It's one misdiagnosis, you miss cancer. It's one, I'm trying to say, like, a guy will present. And you think, it's just general flu. And it's not, it's meningitis, and that person will die the next day because the meningitis wasn't picked up. But it presents as flu, it presents as stomach, he's got diarrhea. It's not, he's got cancer, etc. I think the ego is a big thing, and it's particularly in medicine, in any form of healing. And that the guys that I think, if they get that wrong and they don't realize that, it can be to their detriment.
Have you worked with some professional sportsmen in the past?
Yep.
So looking at them and getting to know them through therapy, I always feel you connect with a therapist or a practitioner on such a deep level, because it's quite a vulnerable stage. What's one thing you can draw across all of them that's unique to them only, that's maybe helped them become successful, personality-wise?
I think tenacity is a big thing. I think, I love reading a lot of sports biographies, so like Shane Warne's, I loved his biography. A lot of the soccer guys, I've read a lot of their biographies. Agassi's biography. You look at Roger Federer, guys that are role models. I think if you look at the commonality between all of them, a lot of them came from nothing. Tiger Woods, like a lot of them came from poverty. You look at a lot of the soccer players, Suarez, Diego Maradona, loved him, Messi, Ronaldo, they grew up from nothing. So that hunger is a big thing. Your lucky break, also an important thing, and that applies to music as well, with guys that have made it. I remember John Bon Jovi said that there are 1 million garage bands in America that were better than Bon Jovi, but never got the break. You've got to get your break. So I think they had a bit of luck, definitely a bit of luck. And the guys that are more qualified to answer that is like Alex Ferguson or Steven Gerrard or guys that have made it to the top. Why did they make it and not someone else? And I remember a well-known piece in Alex Ferguson's biography where he just took over Man United. And they were having a duel one night, and there was drugs and prostitutes and everything. And he went there and he said, "You guys come now, you got a future at Man United." And that was that Beckham, the Nevilles, all of them, and all of them left. They went to Ferguson. The one guy who was more talented than them all was this guy Lee Sharp, and Lee Sharp never made it to that level. And Alex Ferguson talks about it in his book. Eric Cantona stayed at the end each day practicing. You can never practice much. Only else, as he will say to you, golf humbles you. You know, Gary Player, like you've got to stay fit, mind, focus, have a right team, have your therapy that you trust, your clinical psychologist, you guys, your dietitian, your chiropractor, your massage therapist, in any facet, whatever you are. Bit of luck, and I think that's a commonality about that, is being true to yourself. You know, if you speak to Shane Warne, if you read all their books, they have that common thing, Agassi, all those guys, and you've got to love the game. You've got to be so hungry for it. And that's it. It's the guy that's always the one lost at the training, the right break, and that's what I think makes it for the guys. And Donald Bradman would have said that. All the ex-great cricketers, you know, Jacques Callis, A.B. de Villiers, whoever you want to look at, Chris Gale, all those guys, like whoever you want to talk to, that's what it's about.
So how much of that is mental strength, and how much of that is nature, and how much is nurtured, in your opinion?
From what perspective? The talent,
whatever's got them to go there. So there's got to be tenacity, there's got to be the drive and and things, and there's got to be talent, obviously.
Yeah.
Of all those things, how much would you say of it is they born with, and how much do you think has been built through hard work and resilience? And
so you have to have the genetics of talent. And you and I can go and do 3,000 singing lessons. We'll never sing like Bon Jovi or Adam Lambert. We'll never be like Adam Levine from Maroon 5 or Pavarotti. As many singing lessons I get, I'm not that. You know what I'm saying? So you have to have a base where it is your purpose, your destiny, whether you look at it from a religious perspective or what's your destiny, what's your purpose in life, you know? Like an Oprah Winfrey and Ellen, you know, like if you look at people that shift consciousness, whatever they're shifting consciousness with, or healers, you have to have that. And then obviously you're born with the talent. It's the right break. You know, can the dad afford to send you to med school? No, you can't. Can the dad send you to golf school? No, you can't. Do you live in a country where you can't get into America to get on the tour? You can't. But eventually it will happen, you know. Whether you look at Roger Federer, so look at Roger Federer. His mom was South African. Would he have been where he was now if he grew up in South Africa? Who knows? You know, Wayne Ferreira can answer that better. Kevin, the other tennis player, Anderson, he can answer that. All the South African golfers, they've gone overseas. The facilities weren't here when they grew up. They all went to the States. Scholl, Retief, Ernie. So I think that it's definitely a bit of luck there in that, but you have to, it's a combination of many things, you know. But if you pursue that and you have no fear, which for me is a big thing, no fear, there's nothing that's unreachable or unachievable, like really nothing, if you have all those factors that play out. And also luck, you know, if you get a bad injury, if a car hits you, you know, and you know, you've also got a bit of luck as well.
Yeah. One of the problems I'm trying to solve in my own mind is why you can have two talented kids working together. So let me talk about golf specifically. I spent a lot of time at a golf academy in Cape Town, and there were a group of young kids who are all as talented as one another, and they're from the morning, homeschooled, you know, they're 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock, and they have a great coach. The coach there was amazing, good track record, great facilities. But something's missing, you know, they're putting in the work and they have the talents and they have the facilities and the parents have the money. But I'm trying to figure out what is missing, and can you find that thing that's missing and start implementing it and teaching it to more kids so that more have an opportunity?
So I think a big thing with kids is, and this is going to be quite blunt to say, is how much are they doing it for themselves and how much are they doing it for their parents?
Yeah.
Often the father or the mother is frustrated because they never did it. So they want their kid to be the best swimmer. And I see it a lot here with parents. I come in, the kid is exhausted, the kid is burnt out, the kid wants to go on a Saturday morning and enjoy with his mates. He wants to go Saturday night out enjoying. He doesn't want to get up at 5 o'clock for swimming. He doesn't want to get up at 5 o'clock for training. So how much does a kid want it? How much does a parent want it? And that is a big thing, is that not letting the kid burn out, which for me is critical. And then also, is there a psychogenic block? Is there an emotional block? Is there fear? that's also that definitive factor that changes. And then obviously the injury issue, which we spoke about, if it's luck or draw, was it just a horrific injury? Can you bounce back from it? And I'll use a perfect example about that. In fact, I'll give you a brilliant example just now that will summarize that. I'll give you a direct player. I think that's the fundamental thing there. So even if they both have the same the personality and the same focus and everything, what is that shift that changes? And then that's the psychogenic element about it. But if they're burnt out, there's no chance. They're going to burn out.
Yeah. Well, that's something we can talk about now, because I really want to find out about burnout. Specifically in guys that are doing long distance events like running and triathletes and cycling. Is there a stage where that type of exercise continuously can become dangerous to your health? And when, how do people know when they've burnt out and hit that stage?
Cool. So I'll get onto that now. Just quickly, the example I want to use is a guy called Alexander Oxlade-Chamberlain. He played at Arsenal, came to Liverpool. He was broken at Arsenal. And in no way am I in any way being disparaging against the legendary Arsene Wenger. But he was a broken player. And then he got hold of a guy called Jurgen Klopp, that everyone will know, who coaches Liverpool. And Jurgen Klopp rebuilt him. He rebuilt him. He had a horrific injury from a knee. Could have been a career-ending injury. He bounced back, and he's never been happy at Liverpool. So it just shows you the right place, the right coach, and all of that. Burnout. So burnout has many facets. Physical burnout or emotional burnout, both totally different categories. Medicinal burnout as well, which I know you want to allude to with adrenal fatigue and all of that. So it's moderation. For me, it's about moderation. How much do you bowl in the net as a fast bowler without getting a stress fracture? There's a lot of theories and studies now where guys are over-bowling as kids when they're not skeletally mature. There's guys that are overtraining in CrossFit that are getting injured. So that's a lot of the burnout that's a big issue. The other thing, there's jewels happening in the center. So the other areas are, with burnout is, my dad always used to say this to me, is don't leave your form in the gymnasium. So this is really what it's about. So guys will train, overtrain. The coach tells you do this, the mileage, particularly with a comrades runner, and the oak gets to the event and he bombs. He wakes up, he's feeling shit on that day, he runs comrades, he's got diarrhea, he's got flu, burnt out. He trained a year to get ready, and just that day he wasn't ready for comrades. And that's it. It's don't leave your form in the gymnasium. So be ready for the big day, be ready for the big final, be ready that you don't get that injury. And as you know, if your guys know, two types of injuries: trauma, I'm talking about sports injuries now, trauma or muscle repetitive strain injuries. Repetitive strain injuries is incorrect technique, incorrect bowling style, incorrect golf swing. Trauma, bang your knee, twist your ankle, hit the curve, fall off the bike, break your shoulder. That's traumatic injuries. Traumatic injuries we can't really avoid if the technique is that, but the repetitive strain injuries we certainly can. The RSIs we can avoid.
And does that lead to the chronic low-grade inflammation that you guys spoke about on that talk the other day?
Yeah, so that talk was generic on different types of inflammation, emotional, physical, cellular. But the inflammation from a musculoskeletal point of view that's not linked to genetics or emotional, that is pure, like if you get a stress fracture, you're over-bowling. No one should get a stress fracture. If you've ruled out the skeletal issues or like bone density problems, osteopenia, osteoporosis, vitamin deficiencies, D, calcium deficiencies, etc., and a young guy hasn't had like a disease of rickets or certain bone diseases that can create it, and you are getting those stress fractures and you're getting that chronic tendinitis, and that it is linked to incorrect technique, incorrect mechanics. And that's the blend where I found working with biokineticists and physios and conditioning specialists, which is so great, because then you minimize the injury. A tennis player, when the kids are playing, how many hours a week should they play? Those are big discussions. Why is the guy overplaying? Why is the soccer player overplaying? The guys are burnt out. And that's, the human body can do so much. It's the most advanced vessel, like we said, but there's only so much that they can do.
Is there, does your equipment play a role? So the shoes you're wearing when you're running and your bike is set up incorrectly. How much does that play a role in the repetitive injuries?
Okay, so both different topics. Running is critical, and there's a book guys should read called Born to Run. There's a guy in America who ran barefoot. Yeah. And he ran, you'll know him, he actually passed away. But that was the whole journey that guys started getting into this whole minimalist neutral running, minimal, no build-ups. Now there's a shift again. Now guys are running in Hokas, which has got cushioning but light. So running shoes, it has to work for the person. There's no perfect answer. Foot structure, etc. Some guys run in minimalist shoes, some guys run in races, some guys are doing comrades in sandals, some guys run comrades barefoot, which is ultra mile, 90 Ks. So that's the running. The bike is critical as well. The cleat setup, the bike position is crucial. Crucial. I had a patient that had a chronic lower back, sacroiliitis, which is sacroiliac joint damage. I said to your bike setup, she said it's not. I said, I'm telling you now, for years and years and years, I said at your bike setup. Eventually she was riding with a physio behind her, and the physio said, your bike's wrong. She had a bike that was 2 sizes too small for her.
Wow.
Fixed that, her back pain went.
Okay.
So it's critical. So technique and equipment, the grip of a tennis racket, squash, cricket, baseball, all of that is linked to that. You know, the mechanics in the finger with the mitt as a baseball player, all critical on that. You know, your soccer boots, all those mechanics are important, of course, because they affect the body. It's not part of the body, it's an adjunct to the body.
Yeah. So what shoes would you recommend? You said it's dependent on the person. There's no one brand or one style that you would recommend all runners.
So it has to work for the person. They're all great shoes from a running perspective. What are you running? Intermediate, long distance, Asics, Adidas. I've loved Adidas. Ons, which are the new shoes we've got now from Switzerland. Roger Federer advocates them. The Rock advocates them.
Yeah.
It's got to work for you. Saucony's brilliant. Brooks is brilliant. Nike. It's got to work for each person. One person will be avid New Balance. Another one will like Brooks or Saucony. It has to work for each individual.
Have you seen these 5-finger shoes that people are running in?
So those are the Vibrams.
Yeah, the Vibrams, yeah.
So that's that whole talk to the minimalist that we went with. The problem with that is there was a guy, Dave Harrington, who opened Tribe Shoe. He was a well-known triathlete. It took him 2 years to get into a minimal shoe. So the guy goes from a big cushion shoe. He's wearing hard leather shoes from Woolworths at work. His feet are weakening. He's not working intrinsically and strengthening his muscles, i.e. not working barefoot or working barefoot. He whacks into those minimalist shoes, he overdoes it, and he gets a stress fracture. So is it the shoe or is it the conditioning they didn't do? He didn't give it enough time to get into that intermediate shoe.
Yeah. So
when there's a need for podiatry, put the orthotic in. When there's a need for insert, put the insert in. But the conditioning, when you switch to shoes, it has to be a patience game for the mechanics of the foot to work. And that's what it's about.
I'm loving the information you're giving, because all these questions, there's 2 camps. There's always the minimalist is the way to go, or the general Nike shoes.
Yeah.
But there's never just one way or the other. It's individually based.
Diversity is the way of life.
Yeah. I wear the Vibrams when I go hiking and walk the dogs and stuff. But I've lived barefoot. I hate shoes. So I think my muscles, the feet muscles and Achilles and tendons are right for those shoes, but some people may not be.
Absolutely. So with that, you've got to, and it's interesting where they do studies about minimalist shoes and where we see a lot of injuries from that, or guys that are too cushioned up and weakened and be reliant on it. There's a lot of studies about that, about when with mechanics of the foot and that. And like I said, most people that in life are in jobs, and you're going in that shoe that's not great for you, and you're a bank at Investec, or you're in Discovery or consulting or an engineer, you've got to have a certain apparel. You've got to dress properly. You can't go barefoot to a meeting. Imagine. And that's a mindset. But that guy is spending, let's say he's working 10, 12, 13 hours a day in a week, so 60, 70 hours a week, and then suddenly going for a 30K run in the weekend barefoot. He's going to have a problem.
Okay.
You understand? Because he's weak in his mechanics.
Yeah. So I have a little bit of a theory when I was coaching rugby in Cape Town. So the Cape Town schools start playing with boots from the age of 10. And most other places, even Paarl and those places, and in Joburg, they play barefoot until high school. And for some reason, there's a disparity between the size and the development of boys in the southern suburbs Cape Town schools and the Paarl schools and the Free State schools. Do you think you can put that down to underdevelopment because their feet, muscles and things aren't doing the work, or is that rubbish? So
when you speak to Dr. Matara, who for me is a role model, he is brilliant for this whole concept of growth hormone. Okay. So that's very important. And I think, like you look at kids now that are just ballooning and getting massive and strong, and these bronchosaurus necks, and I see kids I'm 6'4" that are taller than me, who's like in Senate 7, grade 5. Well, that's crazy. So what is it about? Is the food changed? And that's a big topic which we can get onto. But that's actually very interesting. If you had to do a median, and I don't know if those studies exist, guys that grow up on a farm, their diet is different. Guys that are growing up in smog in cities, if you had to do a medium check of guys in Senate, in matric, or grade 9, or if you want to look at it nicely, and that's maybe something for you guys to look at, where guys skeletally mature, like males, as you know, is like 16, 17. Ladies are a bit sooner. That final growth spurt in that, like, what is it really about? Is it genetics? How much is it genetics? Their bloodline, they'll have parents that are pipsqueaks, and the two of them are massive bucks. Where's the bloodline through? Where's the genetics through? Has the body adapted? And that's a big topic. That's in itself is a topic, like genetics. So, for example, we're seeing now more and more digital related injuries, guys that are getting thumb changes because of what's happening on phones. Guys that are getting TMJ problems and ear problems, and the whole controversy about 5G or cancer, with the radiation. That's a big topic that neurosurgeons can talk to you about. But like, everything's adapting. When we were growing up playing on bicycles, guys are watching Netflix now. So the mechanics are changing, the back is changing, the body's changing. It's all adapting. But that's a brilliant discussion about growth hormone and that, and like kids and that. But does it link to shoe? Not really with that. Obviously injuries around the foot structure. And if someone for 20 years never wears a shoe versus someone that does wear a shoe for 20 years, there will be mechanical changes. Yeah. The heel, the Achilles, the foot, etc., without a doubt.
I found on the internet your thesis back in 2001 on Achilles Tendinitis.
Yeah.
Is that something you're still passionate about?
I see a lot of Achilles. It was a phenomenal thing, and a guy, Dan Krobler, who was a role model for me as a biokineticist, told me to do it. And it was a great topic. It helped me a lot with runners and dance injuries. But the tendon is a complex thing, a general tendon injury, and so much technology now with platelets and prolotherapy, and there's so much new technology coming through, and shockwave therapy, and everyone's different. But it was phenomenal. And obviously when I see runners, I always go to that journey about working with Achilles injuries, and what works, what doesn't work, when does one need an insert, when does one shoes, mechanical calf tightness, plantar fasciitis, all that type of stuff.
So why would rugby players, for example, one thing that bothers me a lot is that injury under the knife immediately, and most of the time those are tendons or ligaments that have damaged. Am I right?
Depends. Okay, finish your question.
Okay, so let's say knee injury. Then Monday morning you read in the news the guy's been cut, and I don't know exactly what your opinion is on operations and cutting compared to different therapy. But when it comes to something like athletics, let's take Wade van Niekerk for example, or often football players, their recovery time is so much longer than the rugby players, and then the rugby players come back with strapping, and you never see a soccer player playing with strapping on his knee or an athlete running with a knee brace. So talk about that and your opinion on cutting and things like that.
Sure. These are very powerful questions, Nicholas. Well done, my boy. So the one thing that delineates it is you're talking about a contact sport.
Okay.
Rugby is contact sport, number one. Number two, the bulk and the size of a rugby player, the impact on the bodies is very different to a cricketer, soccer player. Just body weight is a huge thing, a golfer.
Yeah.
Okay. Number two, the philosophy of the surgeon is important. When I said about the medical team that you have trust in, there's surgeons out there that don't like to cut. And that's a novel thing, because it's not just about let's, gooi it and go under the knife. But when surgery is needed, it's needed. If there's a fracture in the bone and you can't go holistic, you need to fix it. If there's torn ACL and PCL reconstruction of the cruciates, you got to fix it. You can try everything holistic. As I said, you can go do meditation. That ACL's ruptured off the bone and needs surgery. Okay. You've torn the labrum in the shoulder. The very grey line is when not to do surgery is when there's a possibility of certain things where they don't respond well to surgery. And the other thing, which is also a very important thing, is remember you're dealing with a lot of those guys who are professionals. Their contracts, their livelihood is on it.
Yeah.
They've got to be back, like the guy needs the scope for the knee to fix in that. So it's a tricky one, but sometimes the guy doesn't have the luxury of 8 months. He's got to get fixed quickly. He's got to get back on the pitch. He's got a contract. He's got sponsorship. The guy's got to play. He's got to earn a living. His sponsors are saying, right, listen, Roger Federer, you are sponsored by On Shoes. You've got your, he's got Uniqlo, his clothing. They are not interested. Pete Sampras, I think, was being paid like $10 million a year contract to wear those Nike shorts in his day. He has to play. They're not interested. Tiger Woods, 3 backups later, has to play. He's sponsored by Nike. Got to play. Titleist sponsor him. Got to play. Or TaylorMade. If you don't play, what's the point of sponsoring? So there's a line of the professional guy with a massive pressure to get back on the field in any field of sports. and then the backing. And that's a tricky one, because if you go to the wrong guy with the wrong advice, it can end your career.
Yeah.
And same with kids in that. If the kid is like first team captain, you went to phenomenal prestigious schools, you know about grades, you know about bishops, you know about Cares, Saints, all the top sporting schools, you got to play. Michael House, Hilton, the Oak wants you back. You are useless if you're not playing first team, and you're not playing, and you've got that Saints festival, and you've got that derby with Michael House and Hilton, or Saints and Cares, or St. John's. You've got to play. Injured means nothing to the coach. So there's that pressure off, and you don't always have time on your side.
What is the long-term negative effects, though, if you're getting cut at every injury at the age of 18? A lot of 18-year-olds walk around with 3 shoulder injuries and 3 different, scars on each shoulder. So
we're going to cover this in that talk on the cricket next week, which you'll love and be fascinated, because it's going to be a big thing about that. So if the rehab is not done properly, so let's cover this. That a surgeon is phase 1. Surgeon can do a brilliant job. His scalp goes down. He's going on holiday. The mistake comes of the success of that operation if the rehab is not done.
Okay.
And that's the big thing. So if the guy doesn't listen to the surgeon, if he doesn't follow through with proper rehab, or financially can't afford it, and he rushes the rehab, that is what's critical. And that's the make or break. And also for you guys like you and Peter, is the mindset, because the fear of the injury is never treated. And a well-known soccer player is Daniel Sturridge, that if you read Steven Gerrard's book, he just inflicted with injury after injury after injury. Whereas you look at other guys who got the mind right, like a Luis Suarez, injured, came back from his knee injury, boom, he's back playing. Steven Gerrard came back from his groin injury, he's back playing. Fernando Torres also, lots of injuries through his career. Played for Chelsea, Liverpool. I can talk more from that perspective. But same thing with the golfers, cricketers. There's a big part in Shane Warne's biography, which I read recently, when he talks about his shoulder injury, about the rehab.
Yeah.
How important the mind is with the rehab.
And the rehab is the tedious part that can be boring, because you start off slow, and that's where people kind of give up if and get on the field, drink a pain pill, and they keep going.
So the rehab is what makes it or breaks it, and there's a success. It's that getting up in winter, getting that ice bath, seeing that physio or physical therapist, and working those hours to rebuild that, where you expected it to do something before as opposed to now. That is the make or break. And that is what the surgeon's done the job. You can never always blame the surgeon, but the rehab is what is critical to get the guy back.
So how does an athlete listening to this, that's maybe not under the pressure from a contract or a sponsorship, and they've got a knee injury or shoulder injury, how do they know, should they come to you or should they go get cut?
So it depends on what type of injury it is. He must have trust with his physio, his chiro, his bio, his GP, and that is not always gung-ho, go holistic, but the diagnosis must be correct. It's always about the diagnostics. And if the holistic approach or conservative approach is a better word, can't work, then he must go see a surgeon. And some surgeons will say, cool, no operation, boom, 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 do this, and the guy gets better. Otherwise, some things you can't not do it. A torn Achilles off the bone, you need to reattach it. A broken knee, a fracture, ruptured tendons, rotator cuff. You with me? Like guys close to paralysis with his back, he needs a backup. We don't always like it, but sometimes you've got no choice but to operate. But it's definitely listen to your intuition as a person, as a sportsman. Make sure you have right advice from your psychiatrist or your sports psychologist, whoever's working from the psychogenic side of it, your GP, whoever your sports team is. And when you're at that professional level, make sure your team is confluent. They must have your best interests at heart. And those are the guys that can guide you. Because remember, you're in trauma. Those injuries happen. You're not always thinking the most salient way, that you're worried what is what, and you don't always have the clearest point, and that's what's important.
You said a very interesting thing for me, that the fear of the injury never goes away sometimes in the trauma. Because I had a friend at school who hurt his shoulder and was out a couple of months. When he came back, the first tackle he made, he was down on the floor again, holding his shoulder. When he went to the physio and whoever did the check, they said there's absolutely nothing wrong, but he was convinced he hurt it again. And the physio said it's just in your mind. You got to get over that. So how often does that happen? Is that an anomaly, or is that something that you see quite often?
So there's probably two things that came wrong with it. One is that he didn't do the psychogenic rehab part of it. So the injury happened. I don't think he dealt with the emotional link of the injury. So surgeon did the mechanical thing, fixed the injury. The physio did them, but I'm sure that at some stage he never touched base with a life coach or an NLP practitioner to process the trauma of that. And that's where guys like Daniel Sturridge, Fernando Torres, Shane Warne talk about that, about the mind of the injury. And there's a brilliant saying, if you resist, it persists. If you're going to go back and say, I know I'm going to get injured if I fall, I know I'm going to get injured if I get hit. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
That's the psychogenic element.
So I always believe the mental skills or the mental side of performance and sport underpins the physical and everything. But I've never applied it to injuries, and what you're saying sounds to me that it goes that far as well. It comes down to the negative side as well, not just the performance side and the positive side.
So that's the whole performance thing, is about the right mind. I know that there was a particular lady that helped with the Springboks and the cricket guys, Cheryl someone.
Calder.
Yeah. Ernie L spoke about her with Coronation, because mind, body, soul is linked. And that's a big discussion about, if you look at the guys that do well, the bosses, the Man Cities, the Australians, us, I'm sure that the coaches that, on their point, Russi and the guys, sorry, I forgot his name, Russi Rasmus, that they bring in those types of things. It's not just the conditioning coach. You're talking about a medical team with everything, 20, 30 people. Like, it's a big thing for those big teams, the basketball players in America. It's so many different elements and so many different dynamics.
I spoke to Ian Shippey, I don't know if you know
Sure.
him. And he was at the World Cup 2007 and 11, and he said Jake White's support staff team was about 45 people, because he just believed in that approach. You know, he had someone specific for every little thing to deal with, and he says that's part of why they were so successful under him.
Ian, the pastor.
Yeah.
I know him, I treat his family. So his dad supports Manchester. It's important. You know, like, you need to have that spiritual guidance, and you've got to, you know, some guy can just be, he can go into the nets, he can go and practice. He just needs to change a thing in the mind. And that's what performance is, performance anxiety. And that's where guys like Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, you know, I don't really know the American coaches and that, where the guys are just so good, where it's about how do you coach someone, you know, when does a coach break a person? You know, like when that guy's broken and they don't have the confidence, as good as they are, the talent's there, you know, form is temporary, class is permanent. It's a well-known saying. And on their day, like, they can just have a string of bad luck, duck after duck after duck, can't take wickets, drop catches, and it's just one change and it changes.
I did my master's thesis on performance anxiety, and tried to link it to emotional intelligence and emotional regulation. And I used a group of South African school kids as a base, and just regardless of the performance anxiety, the low levels of emotional intelligence and emotional regulation that I found in 18-year-olds in our country was quite shocking. And I don't think our country has been open to that yet, to the how important the mental side and the emotional side is of things.
So it's a big thing. I mean, when I worked with guys from overseas and you know, I think the Mecca guys, you know, you always look at the Aussies that are so phenomenal. I remember, I think it's closed down. They had the Dennis Lilly Academy. Dennis Lilly was a well-known bowler. You'll know him, Jeff Thompson, the famous guys in their day. And the academies in that, and I think that is so important from the mentorship point of view, if that's where you're angling at, about the emotional link of that. And what they did, I heard, is that even when they retire, Glenn McGrath, Justin Langer, apparently all the guys that are coming through the ranks, they get a role model. So Justin Langer is in charge with a kid named, let's call him Curtly Jones. And Justin Langer will go to wish him on his 18th birthday, take him out for dinner. They create a family environment. Yeah. And I know that Adam Bacher, ex-South African cricketer, Porky we call him, he has started a similar thing at Kes, where he's got those guys, the kids coming through the Kes ranks. And you can definitely chat to me, he'll explain it to you. And Hugh Page will also tell you about that, where they're starting that culture where we've got it as well, where an A.B. de Villiers, a Graham Smith, a Herschel Gibbs, Alan Donald, Sean Pollock, these guys, McCartney, they'll have the guys coming through and they'll be role models to them. And it's just that's the emotional link of that. But definitely when you hopefully get a chat to Pete, you and Peter Fagan, and you guys can talk about that will be huge, the performance anxiety. And we'll definitely cover that with her next week when we chat on the talk.
Awesome. I want to touch on trauma in your practice, specifically in healing, because one thing I've become aware of now recently is that the trauma can manifest itself physically, or it does. And does that lead to injuries, and do people hold on to the injuries because they're holding on to their trauma? And I've got so many questions on this topic, so let me let you go off it and then I'll catch up.
So what type of trauma are we talking about? Sports trauma?
So specifically the emotional trauma
Okay.
and maybe childhood trauma, PTSD, how that manifests physically. So this is really the mind, emotional, body connection.
So the best way for me to answer that is through examples. A patient will come to me and they will start up and say, right, I've been to like a lot of chiropractors, I've been to a lot of physiotherapists, I've done 5 years of Pilates, I've done 5 years of biokinetics, I've been to x-rays, I've been to surgeons, I've been on drugs, and they're not getting better. So what are they missing? Is every physio missed it? Is every chiro missed it? Is every orthopedic guy missed it? Something's missing. And that is where you've got to say, right, are we looking at something different? Is it just a bad misdiagnosis? And that's what starts to bring and purports the whole concept of emotional. And I had a patient come in, he had a bad back, he went for 5 neurosurgeons, they all told him he needs a back up. And his name was Chris, and I said, Chris, it's emotional. I said he was working with his dad, he was in a bad place, in the wrong relationship, and I said, go and sort out your life. And he got upset with me, and he says, I'm talking rubbish. I said, cool. Anyway, came back 2 years later. I said, how was the back up? He said, I never had it. He started his own business, he got out of the relationship, and his back pain went. So that basically tells you about the emotional link, number one. Another case, the guy was also a bad thing. We changed ergonomics, put him in a standing desk, he started Pilates, changed his mindset, his back pain went. I'm not saying there's never a need for a backup, where you have a massive tumor growing there, and some healers will tell you you can't get rid of the tumor, but it's a hit and miss. But the emotional link, never underestimate the emotional trauma. And those that didn't watch my talk last week, I spoke about a lady that came in, and her opening line to me was she was raped when she was 2 years old by her brother. And her body detached. She lost her mind, her vision, her soul, everything. It links to a musical called Tommy, very well-known musical. The older guys will know about The Who, about a kid, deaf, dumb, and blind kid, well-known story, Pinball Wizard, the song. So emotional, physical is always in tandem. What person gets autoimmune? What person gets an injury? Why is the injury there? Is it just luck? Is it an ergonomic thing? It's a big, big discussion, economics, but we are seeing more and more emotional, cellular trauma, emotional trauma, headaches. Lady came in for headaches. She had all the ops with the headache clinic, and in no way am I disparaging them. And as I said at the beginning, there's a place for everything. And she wasn't getting better, and you could see the trauma and the pain. And we just spoke. She lost her son, and her house burnt down. They processed that. Her headaches went. Wow. So how do you explain that? Yeah. She went. She was diagnosed. She had all the ops done, beta blockers. Went to specialist neurologist. Processed the trauma. Her headaches went.
And I think it's important to note that what people see trauma as isn't only that. So it's not just a bad divorce or a car accident. It's also often something very subtle, something that what do they say? They say it's not something that happens, it's also something that doesn't happen, that you expect it to happen as a kid in a critical stage. So when I sometimes speak to people, they'll tell me, I never had any trauma growing up. My family was fine. We had money. We had everything. I went to a good school. But there are so many small individual events that may have caused the trauma. And after a long period of dealing with it, because I tend to find with younger kids, they don't open up as easily. Yeah. Maybe they're not as aware as an adult. But when you tap into something and you find that small thing that happened, maybe just someone teased them, or mom was late picking you up from school, and that's manifested into behavioral patterns. So is that something that you're also picking up on? Because the examples you've used are something that are quite hectic examples.
So it's muscle memory and it's cellular memory. The accident could have happened, the injury could have happened when they were a little kid. They could have got a fright with post-traumatic stress as a little baby that they turned off. And who's more aptly qualified is you and Peter and Kim and like clinical psychologists that deal with that emotional trauma with the kid growing up. He got a fright at a birthday party. He got a fright going to see a movie, and years later he had a fear of water. All of that is emotional recognitive therapy. All of that. That's not like the guys that are specialized in that. Peter's got a big passion for all of that. The whole cognitive processing and that. So definitely the emotional link of that, and sometimes it only comes out years later. Sometimes they go through the whole life subconscious about it and not aware of it. and then they just never get to the root of it, and that plays into purpose and identity. But that is a big thing. Emotional intelligence, emotional trauma that is not dealt with, and it can come out years later. A guy can have a bad breakup. And exactly like you said, everyone takes trauma and stress, and that's a better word that we use more like aptly, is like, it's not about the stress of writing your car exam or your matric dance or that stress on a job. It's the subtle stress. It's the emotional build-up every day, that what I call sulfur acid, toxic acid, that builds up in your body, and that is what is the big trigger about it. It's not you've just had a massive car accident, or you've had a miscarriage, or you've gone through a massive divorce, or there was abuse at home or domestic abuse. It's not about that. It's that subtle build-up that triggers.
Yeah. I'll probably have to speak to Peter and Kim about this, but can trauma also manifest in things like weight gaining and eating disorders and things?
Sure. Of course. You read up things on body dysmorphia. Those are big topics. Eating disorders, trauma, comfort eating. Those are huge things. Like, is it just about cutting out carbs and sugar? No, it's about what's the vessel about? What's the body about? And you can see the trauma, you can see the psychogenic element. And a lot of guys, even today, they don't deal with that. A lot of specialists, they're not into diet, they're not into emotional stuff. It's just symptoms. And that's what's so sad, is that as advanced as medicines become, and that's what Dr. Mataro was talking about, there's still guys out there that will just look at symptoms. Go on an antidepressant, go on an anti-anxiety. You're depressed, boom, eat it, sort it out, go on a diet. It's not about that. It's really not about that. It's about listening to the comfort element and nourishing the soul and listening to intuition. And that's what it's about.
I think it was you that told the example, and I'd like you to tell it about the lady who had trauma at birth. Can you chat a bit about that?
Came in 60 years old, pain the whole body. I said to her before the start, I said, I can't do anything different to what anyone else has done. She's like, her whole life had chronic pain. So me and Claudia, my buyer, we worked on her, and we backtracked it through acidity and trauma when she was at birth. We processed that, and her back pain went. So that's 60 years of cellular trauma that manifested in pain.
Wow. And she's fine now. She's
pain-free.
Pain-free.
Yeah, pain-free.
It's a tough one for people to know exactly when. And I think that's why a center like this one is so amazing, because you can come here knowing that you'll be able to look at all the options. But so often people go to a chiro with a back pain, and they don't know when they should turn to someone else about back pain. And will that psychologist they go to have that kind of ability to deal with that as well?
Yeah. So that's the beautiful thing about variety and choice. Sometimes it is just about a brilliant adjustment. That a guy slipped, he's put his hip up, click it, he's pain-free. Sometimes it is just about a brilliant neck manipulation, and the guy who's had headaches for 3 years, adjust his back and neck and he's pain-free. That's the beauty when an alignment happens and it works. It's a one-off session. Where the problem comes in is if they're not getting better after a few sessions. And sometimes guys will come in, they've been going for physio or chiro or something for a year, like 3 times a week, regular, and the ache is not getting better. What are we missing? Same here, like if I see a guy and I'm just not feeling it, then we've got to investigate. What are we missing? Is there cancer? Is there emotional stuff? You always should know after a few sessions if the guy's getting better or not getting better. And it should be the volition and the responsibility of the therapist to know that.
Yeah. What is your take on CBD and cannabis?
Huge.
Is it?
Huge. I think it's great. It's definitely becoming in the forefront of medicine. I was talking to a patient about it as a career option. And it's going to become big already. And the interesting thing is, how's it going to play out with the pharmaceuticals? Because when does a person have to go on a chemo drug, which costs him $70,000? And when the guy can just get cannabis that's stipulated correctly and conjured correctly and can help him, the results it's doing with Alzheimer's, with Parkinson's. A lot of the guys in Israel and Holland are looking at that, where cannabis is becoming huge for dermatitis, cannabis creams. Like, it's a massive industry, and it's amazing that countries like Australia, Canada, here they're opening up now.
Yeah.
It's great, and I think it's wonderful. Hemp, all those things are going to be great, and it's exciting.
Yeah. Do you make use of like a CBD based massage oil when you do work, or are you
No, I use baby oil because I don't use onic in that, because I think that when you're doing a lot of soft tissue, it's quite toxic, the smell, and it can be nauseating. So for me, and that was from Lawrence Mars, I learned that it's just baby oil for lubricant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But guys do. Then ask for rubs to get, and you can get lots of great products on the market that are legit, that are used for inflammation. They're great menthol based cannabis. There's some brilliant stuff out there.
So baby oil there's nothing toxic in, or anything in it, so it's quite a good one.
If a baby can handle it, then it's cool. Yeah. That's been my baby for 20 years for lubrication.
Okay, well, yeah. Can we talk about just lifestyle a little bit? So personally, I've put in quite a few lifestyle changes over the last 2 or 3 years that has greatly changed the way I live and the way my mind works and things. For someone, just the average Joe out there, what are some of the first things you recommend in terms of lifestyle changes and things people maybe not know about? Everyone knows you got to eat better. Everyone knows you got to exercise, even though we don't do it. But something else that maybe that you can touch on.
So for me, it's about having fun, purpose, and identity. If you can get those formulas right, I think you're pretty much on track. There's a musical, big fan of musicals, my family, called Rent. And
yes.
Rent, the essence of Rent, the story was no day but today, but be in the moment. I think we miss it. And that's what's interesting with lockdown now, is that being locked down in the world, doing something unconventional, we miss the basic simplicities of life. Going for a run, going for a coffee, going for a beer with a mate, going to watch a concert, going to dance. And I think humans have become so precocious about that because we forget what we love doing. And that's perhaps what will reignite now with the universe and the world about getting back to things we love. Something so simple that we took for granted, going to the gym, going to CrossFit, going to buy figurines, painting, meeting a mate for a ballet class. Lifestyle is based about balance. And it's a nice thing, and if you're into spiritual stuff or you're into like a DiMartini or all the well-known guys, Robin, guys at the Palm now, Eckhart Tolle, Marcus Aurelius Ferrari, all those guys, it's the essence of truth, being in the moment, nourishing yourself, and having purpose and identity. And it is such a simple thing to say, but it's not. How many guys that, whether you're at school or late in life, wake up on a Monday morning after Sunday night, hearing the carte blanche tune and saying, I'm excited for work? On the planet, how many guys really love what they do?
Yeah. I don't know if you follow Jordan Peterson at all, the clinical psychologist.
Know the name, yeah.
He has this thing where he says about making changes when you wake up feeling that way, and the comfort of obviously having a job and the risks of leaving it to start something new. But then he says the risks of not starting something new are bigger, because 5 years down the line, you'll wake up and you'll be exactly where you were, but worse, because now you're 5 years older and you just realize 5 years have passed and I've still done nothing. So making changes like that just to be happy rather than to try and be comfortable and safe at a young age, I feel is quite critical, because there comes a time when you have family and you have responsibilities and you can't. So you started your own thing at quite a young age, obviously. What advice would you give to someone, let's say like me, 27 years old, trying to start something, just to take on those risks and the unknown, really? Yeah.
So look, I think what's interesting now is that out of the darkness, what's coming out with COVID in the world, it's a perfect time to reset. I think I had a guy the other day, he was telling me, a brilliant businessman, and about opportunities will come out of the darkness, post-war time, post-maritime, post-trauma, is that there'll be brilliant opportunities. And those that survive and bounce back will really flourish, because it is resetting. Everything is resetting. I think that depending on your business and that, back yourself, back the brand, have a clear and concise element, be in the moment and know what you want from it. You must have crystal clear intentions. Intention is a big thing. It's all very well to say, I wish. The wish is what you're getting from the universe. Just, I wish I had $1 million. Just, I wish I drove a Ferrari. Just, I wish I lived in America. Wish is wish. Make it happen. Play it out. And action is what's important. Action, reaction, all of that. You've got to have a concise idea. So for me, this was a 20-year journey, like a dream of 20 years to manifest. And that's how this built up. And anything, and if you change your career or whatever, it's got to work for you. You've got to decide what you want. And just always back yourself. Don't live in fear. A lot of people say to you, mad, it's not going to work. And with that are the different elements. is it going to be for you in the place you grew up in, where you reside? Is that important? Do you need to move? Do you listen to science? Do you go and make a move to Australia, to America, where you get a brilliant opportunity where someone will headhunt you? It's got to work for you. And that's what it's about, where you creating your apex and starting to start your journey in business.
Do you feel so that you sometimes play a mentorship role to your patients? And on top of that, how important do you feel mentorship is?
So that you'd have to ask patients. I can't talk subjectively from patients, but I do know that a lot of times it's not just about clicking someone and I'll see them in 2 weeks again, because I like to delve into the other stuff. That for me is a passion. Often I'll sit here with the guys in the evenings and have a coffee and chat about facets of life and that. I think that from a healing perspective, you've got to be in the moment with the person. You've got to trust the person, because that's it. You can go to 2-3 different people and you connect with one and you heal with one, and one you don't heal. You've got to have that trust. You've got to work with the person, and I think that's important. But mentorship is huge. Sure.
Who are some of the mentors for you growing up that you still talk to?
Lawrence Myers for me from a medicinal point of view. Currently Dr. Matara, who you'll meet one day. Peter Stringer, you know him.
Yeah.
He was a cricket coach for me, a huge role model for me. Alex Schuster was my drum teacher. Those were guys that I knew personally. And bigger things were guys like Christopher Reeve, Superman. He was a role model that I never met. Guys in the music element, some of the drummers that were role models for me. Simon Phillips, drummer for Toto, was a big role model for me from music. Alan Donald, Hugh Page as a cricketer, Clive Rice, Kenny Dalglish, Ian Rush, Craig Johnson from Liverpool. Those were guys that were role models for me.
Yeah. So you draw inspiration from people that you can spend time with, and then personalities that you look up to.
Sure. So is it pragmatic? Is it in the moment? Or is it just like a lifestyle where their philosophy is something that you resonate with?
Yeah. I've got some questions that I ask every person, but before we go there, I would like you to touch on adrenal fatigue, because that's something that my eyes were opened up to for the first time on Wednesday's talk. Can you explain what is adrenal fatigue and what does it lead to, and how do people go about treating it?
So where that all opened up for me was from a personal point of view. In standard 9, grade 11 and matric, I got very ill. I had glandular fever. And in matric, I had hepatitis. I missed 2 terms of 9 and matric, grade 11 and matric. So that's like 8 weeks of school. And I got Coxsackie virus and went to GPs, and they said rest. And I wasn't coming right. And also, like you, playing a lot of cricket, music, sport, lighting and sound, the shows, and just through varsity, sports, club, jolling, and just got worse. Started a band, and I just was burning out. And I went to a guy called Herman Engelbrecht, who was a GP, homeopath, and iridologist, and he changed my life. My diet, I had IBS, had mercury poisoning. I just was really at the end of my tether. And he said the next thing would have been that yappy flu, chronic fatigue, ME, that Dr. Matara spoke about in the talk. So the adrenal fatigue, adrenal glands are part of that links to everything. It's probably a very complex system, the endocrine system. And endocrinologists and those guys are more apt to describe it, but it's basically the functioning, the cellular functioning, the driving nucleus behind everything. The thyroid, everyone talks about hyperthyroid, hypothyroid, different elements of that. And all the hormones and chemicals, that's what the endocrine system is about. And the adrenal is linked to that. The adrenals are important with that. They play off with that elements about that. Adrenal fatigue is when they're in hyperdrive, and then that also links to the parasympathetic and autonomic nervous system, where guys in flight or fight response. It's all interconnected. Everything in the body is interconnected. Everything is interconnected in the human body. And that's the beauty. And that's where medicine is so important, is that you'll go to, like, for example, a GP who is treating out of his scope, where you should see an endocrinologist. Or you go to your gynae who can treat it better than the GP. You with me? And that's what's amazing, is when the guys do get that right, and they get that formula when they need to see a physician, when they need to see a guy that specializes in hormonal treatment. Is the athlete taking medication that he needs? That he's on growth hormone, a nutritionist, a dietitian. And that's what adrenal fatigue links to, where one of the systems is imbalanced, and that's where everything starts to fall off the cliff. Same with your car, your timing of your car, and the imbalance is there, and that's when disease and pathology. Disease is a shift of cells because the body's not balanced. That's what disease means.
So to cure diseases, what we're trying to do is to maintain balance, to gain balance back.
Prevention.
Or prevention.
Prevention.
Yeah. Okay.
Prevention.
Adrenal fatigue, is that something that's misdiagnosed a lot because it's not something that's conventional as yet, or is it a conventional topic?
So I think you go through phases where 1 year everyone will be told they've got bipolar, 1 year everyone has got lupus, 1 year everyone will have fibromyalgia. Sometimes it's almost like there's a flavor of topic where things are diagnosed and misdiagnosed, and depending where you live in which country. Some countries you'll be prone to getting a thing called Lyme's disease, and some countries you won't. And it will come up, and maybe a guy's been in practice for 40 years and you'll see one case in 40 years.
Yeah.
So it's also like dependent. Does a guy live by a river? Does he live by a steel mine, or like he works in Scotland in the mines, and then he'll get epithelial damage, mesothelioma in the lung, which is a form of cancer that is from asbestos. If a guy doesn't work by asbestos, and the guy might say, well, he doesn't know that guy, and I lost my uncle to that, where he grew up in Scotland in the mines, he moved here, the GPs didn't ask about that, and he actually developed mesothelioma cancer from a form of asbestos that he died from because he worked growing up his whole life in the Scottish mines. Yeah. So that's where diagnosis is important. And fatigue and adrenal fatigue, I don't think anything disease is conventional. Are you asking if it's becoming rife? Yes. Why? Because humans are burning out. Humans don't have balance. We're killing ourselves through stress, through trauma, working harder, high taxes where you live, especially now, trying to keep business going, living beyond our means. So yes, all of those things, a lot of disease. We're seeing a lot of neurological disease, a lot of autoimmune triggers, adrenal fatigue, because we really are burning out and we don't respect our vessels.
Yeah.
And that's a dietary thing, like when I was growing up, your dad will tell you this, if you didn't have that tomato in a day or that lettuce in a day, it would go off. Now you can go to Woolworths or Pick and Pay and that thing is still around a week later. Why?
Yeah.
Chemicals.
Yeah.
And that's something when you speak to the gastroenterologist to talk about the chemicals, the pesticides in the food. You can't waste food. Food costs money.
Yeah.
Not for me to answer that. That's just a chip.
Yeah. Interesting though, because as I told you earlier before we started, my fiance, she's had some issues with autoimmune and things, and the seasons on the farm when they have to be spraying the grapes and things, when she was still in the Western Cape, she would have sinus for months and different issues, often a sore throat and things. And you kind of put it down to winter flu because it's synonymous with winter. But thinking back now, because she grew up on a farm and things, that's exactly when she gets sick. And also if she doesn't eat the organic vegetables and food, which is quite a mission to find sometimes, but we've found our places. If she doesn't do that, then she gets sick again. So would you put that down to chemicals? I know it's not your field, but...
Definitely. I think with the rise in cancer, colonic cancer, all of that, it's definitely linked. Celiac disease. Kim can talk about all of this. Yeah. We are no doubt about it. Like, I think anyone that would argue about that is either linked to that. But there's definitely a shift in the body, in the sicknesses we're getting, in all the parasites, the exposure we're doing, things we're not designed to do and not designed to eat, etc. Certain foods, alcohol. Definitely. In the 1800s and 1900s, guys coming up, maybe look at all the Roman warriors. Did they get as much cancer? You have to look at the records.
Yeah.
That's a good question to ask an oncologist in that.
Yeah.
Why is there such an increase in that with the cancer? And that is a brilliant topic, emotional. But my suspicion is definitely linked to chemicals, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What is your diet like?
Mine. I normally have more fluids. If you ask my mom and my dad and my team here, I've grown up mainly with fluids. I don't eat a lot. Gabby, or my wife, she'll cooks brilliantly, but I'll have one meal a day. And funny enough, when I'm here, if you ask the guys, I'll have like a few coffees, a few smoothies, specialist smoothies and that, and I'll have one meal a day. When I go on holiday or if I'm in the bush and that, and I start having lunch, breakfast, dinner, I become lethargic. So my system is much more designed for fluid.
Yeah.
Everyone is different, but yeah, I mean, am I craving the occasional sweet and wine gum? Yes. I grew up loving Coca-Cola. It depends for every person, but is it perfect? No. Am I happy with my diet? It could be better. There's always perfection and striving. Yeah, but I'm very conscious about that. Yeah, I mean, if I feel like if I'm craving a burger, a cheeseburger, of course. You know,
okay, yeah.
But wheat is toxic and sugar, etc.
So you stay away from those
Yeah.
Kelly spoke quite a bit.
You must enjoy life. Huh?
Yeah,
It's a well-known story. It's a true story. A guy went to his doctor. The guy was smoking 60 cigarettes a day. He was drinking. The doctor was a fitness fanatic. Who's the guy that dropped dead of a heart attack at 35? The GP.
Oh, really? Yeah.
True story. You need to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And balance, moderation and balance.
Yeah. What is your take on these diets? At the moment, there's 3 big ones that I've come across. It's obviously the vegan diet, and then the ketogenic, and then the carnivore diet, almost as a counter to the vegan.
So Herman Engelbrecht, the guy that I went to it was a brilliant chat we had. He's very much about what blood type you are, what diet suits you.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it meat that's good for you? Again, it is so pinpoint specific, and maybe with Cal, I'll give you her details. She's the one that's best to ask that, but it must work for you. Some guys, it is a low-fat diet. You know, Tim Noakes got into a lot of trouble, a lot of people, because guys misunderstood what he was saying from his diet perspective, with the whole keto diet and the whole carb and the fasting diet. I think it is so specific to every person. And I don't think that there's just a generic diet that works. And it can't work. I mean, humans are different. We have variety. Everyone is different. DNA, genetics, so it must work for you. It must work. Some people cannot afford to go vegan and can get grossly sick.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great concept, and I'm certainly not into animal cruelty and that and fur and all of that. And it would be amazing if we can not have to have the trauma of chicken farms and dairy farms and abattoirs and all of that. It would be amazing.
Yeah.
But some people do need meat in their diet. You know, some people do need iron, and if they can't get it from a neutral supplement, then they must make sure that there is no celiac disease. They must make sure that there is no malabsorption syndrome. They must make sure that they are working with cranios and they're absorbing it, because it's all very well to not eat it, ingest it, but then they must get the right supplements or they're going to be malnourished.
Yeah. My last formal question is your take on COVID-19 and preventative measures that you've been taking that you would recommend people to take.
So, and I'm not an epidemiologist and I'm not a virologist. Do I think that it's dangerous? Yes. Do I think that it's about alarmist? It doesn't make sense, the numbers from me. You know, out of 7 million cases in the world, 8 million cases, however many, out of 8 billion people, 7 billion people on this planet, 700,000 deaths, 300,000 deaths, 65,000 people last year died of influenza in America. If we had to every day look on CNN and the mortality rate every day of cancer, TB, HIV more specific to Africa, heart attack, myocardial infarction, angina pectoris, lupus, diabetes, you're talking a good couple 100,000 deaths a day. Can you imagine how alarmist people will be?
Yeah.
Do I have fear of it? No. Am I cautious about it? Yes. You must protect the comorbidities, the guys that have asthma, pulmonary conditions and that, but we've got to flush it out. And just before lockdown, if you don't know this, there was a breakout of mumps and measles, I think, at St. John's.
Yeah.
Viruses are there. We don't lock the world down because of chickenpox. We don't lock the world down. So that's all those conspiracies. Is it one world order? Is it China? Must we be aware of it? Yes. But the problem is the social impact that's going to happen now. The kids, the trauma, businesses, suicide, depression, teenage pregnancies, beating up at home, domestic abuse, and that worldwide. We're not designed to be locked up. So it's a tricky one, because what is the perfect answer?
Yeah.
Sweden tried their way, New Zealand tried their way, America tried, we tried here. There's no perfect answer, but what is really the perfect? And I speak to specialists and mates of mine, no one's got the perfect formula. There is no perfect formula. But are we all going to get it? However virulent it is and however infectious it is, yes. But what is the correct protocol? So obviously we're trying everything here. You know, when people come in, masks, sprays, temperature checks and that. But the danger is those that they do get it and they're learning about it. Every day they're telling you something new. Sometimes you are asymptomatic when you don't have the symptoms. You don't have to have a temperature. And you're spreading it to someone who is a case for it, you know. But it's a tricky one. It's a very, very contentious debate. But I don't think anyone can argue that we can't always be more hygienic. You know, a guy goes to the restaurant, he picks his nose, he wipes it on the table. You know, things happen. You know, there's fomites, there's bacteria and chojos and everything in restaurants and in shopping centers. I don't think anyone can say that they can't always be more hygienic. And I think that's what's wonderful about it. And it's interesting what's going to come out of it. I think a lot of dynamic shift. Do we have to fly to New York for their 2-day business meeting? That's going to change. Better carbon emissions, less traffic, less hijackings, less traffic, less petrol, more time, family time. Guys, patients have told me they've never worked as hard now from home in businesses, different to manual therapy. But then, you know, you look at the guys that are affected, the businesses, the hairdressers, the salons, guys that need to make a living. How can you tell someone they're not essential? Essential is what it takes to put food on the table.
Yeah. And in terms of preventative measures, obviously the social distancing, the masks, the sanitization and hygiene. Do you think, are you doing anything dietary wise to try and strengthen your immune system, or?
So when I was sick in Synergy, that already started my journey with immune system. When I used to get regular fever blisters, skin broke out, hair fell out, hair still falling out. Used to be always sick, and that antibiotic, and then I started veggie juicing. So there's always things for the immune system, and it's got to work: zinc, magnesium, craniosacral, hyperbaric oxygen chamber, the vitamin drips, the IV drips, meditation, breathing, being focused on the mind, work on cellular trauma, work with your life coach, see a craniosacral therapist, work with a dietitian, cut out the acid triggers, take high doses of turmeric, high doses of ginger, plenty of stuff, Nikki, plenty of stuff, brother. And balance. And then, you build your immune system up. Everyone can.
Yeah. Where can someone get IV drips around here?
I know there's a lot of different places. We have them here. There's the Ivy Bar, who are very good in Bluebird. Most pharmacies, Rock Cottage, do them there in Stratton Park. Your GP can do the IV drips as well. There's a lot of debate about that as well. I know there was a talk a few months ago on 702. There's that are pro it or against it. Some guys say it's rubbish. It's got to work for you. There's the thiamine drips, and there's so many different types of drips that the guys can do.
Yeah.
But it's got to work for you.
Okay. So, quickfire questions. The 3 best books you've ever read.
Sure. Shantaram, I loved that book. It was brilliant. Open from Agassi was great. And I would say, so many brilliant books. I would say Red Notice.
Okay.
On a hedge fund guy. True story, went to Russia, took on the Russian oligarchs, and Putin to this day is hunting him.
And 3 books you'd recommend in this field of performance health.
Agassi, Open is great. Shane Warnes was great. I think Perseverance, Tenacity, Vic Vermeulen would have been a brilliant cricketer, broke his back. South Africa, he was an ex-Graham Pollock. Christopher Reeve, brilliant, his biography book there. And then the spiritual books, Monkosati's Ferrari, brilliant book. Robin Sharman, I think his name was, I forgot his surname, I think that's him.
Yeah.
And then there's so many good books with functional medicine. It's got to work for you. Is it a Deepak Chopra? They all say a lot of the same things: the power of now, being in the moment, consciousness. When you walk in, and the book will call you. It will resonate with you. And also your therapist, whether it's a Pete or Kim, they'll give you great books to read.
Yeah. What are some of the non-negotiables for you in life that you hold yourself to?
True to yourself. I don't have time for jealousy. Be better at what you can do. I don't have time for ego. And just being in the moment. Don't live in fear. And that's a big thing. Like, it's so easy to say be in the moment. Consciousness, purpose, and identity. Those for me are non-negotiable. But humans make mistakes. We all make mistakes. No one's perfect. And we're all learning. We had experience. We've got the knowledge. We now must embrace life and move on. But I don't have time for fear. And you must be true to yourself.
Are there some daily routines that you do every day, like meditation, some mindfulness, maybe breath work? Is there something you do every day, or something you can talk about?
So, Nikki, for me with my work, I'm always in the moment when I walk in here. I was actually talking to Justine earlier about this. When I walk in here, like I come in here, I'm almost setting myself up, same as a batsman does, or a golfer, or a pilot, or a musician. And that the minute I walk in here, I'm ready to go into that moment. What's coming to the door, what to heal in that. I've designed my office like that. So the consciousness and the mindfulness is 24/7 for me. Do I meditate? No, I'm hyperactive. Meditation could be cool, but when I shut down, I shut down. For me, music is big. That's a big way for me as a drummer. And then, if I'm reading a book or watching Netflix or watching ER, which is my favorite TV show, which molded me for what I do. And then connecting, not forgetting that you've got to have fun in life. Meet your mate for the beer, meet your friends. If you've got to have that consciousness, and that for me is what's important from mindfulness.
Awesome. The 5 most important things in your life right now.
5 most important things in my life. Sure. Liverpool. My family, Gabby and my family, patience. My therapist and work is important. My brother's on a very amazing journey in America, my sister, and just health, just living life and embrace life and grow with the team. And that's important for me. That's important. Have fun and live it up. That for me is important.
Awesome. What advice would you give to Junior Wayne if you could speak to him now?
Junior Wayne. So I think Marco, my associate, was Junior Wayne. So the biggest thing is, and it sounds like a stuck record, and this is to patients, is go for your dream. It's easy to say. I spoke about this. So when I was building this, like a lot of people said, it's not going to work. The time's not right. So I got a lot of demoralizing answers where they said, you're mad, couldn't get funding. Just back yourself and create what you want. Never give up. It sounds so cliche, but it is so true. Like nothing is impossible to achieve. I know Christopher Reeve was a big role model for me. He says in his book, and I would recommend you read his book, about, be careful what you think for, because it will happen. You will create it. The consciousness of creating, the action of it, to say, I want this to happen. I want to make this work. And that is so important. But when you have your dreams, go for it. No matter what your social dynamics are, what trauma you've been through, be in the moment, embrace it, and never give up on what you want to achieve in life. Don't be a victim. Play it out. Go for it. Not working, shift it. Don't get stuck. And just always refresh your moment, your path. Life for me is like a highway, like Joburg to Pretoria. Each turn-off is a turn-off of the soul. The M1 is eternal. Like that's the flow of energy. If you had a bad schooling, change it. If you're in a bad relationship, change it. If you hate where you emigrated to, don't have that ego you spoke about. Like go back, restart, rebuild. Don't just go in the moment and let negativity kick in. And back yourself in life and go for it. And that's what I would say.
That's a great way to end this, I think. Thanks for that, Wayne.
Nick, I'm proud of you, man, and awesome to reconnect after so long. And well done for this brilliant, brilliant journey. And I know it's going to do very, very well for you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And look, this place is amazing, and your
Thank
office,
you,
your office looks amazing. That's when I last time we're going to take a photo there in front of that cabinet, okay? Because the last time I saw you, I think you had about half of those. So
that's sort of when I was 30. My parents didn't know what to get a bachelor at 30, and they got me the original Superman and Batman. And that's what started their journey. And then last year I had a gentleman by the name of Tom Welling. For those guys that watch Smallville, and the honor of treating him, he walked in here and he started laughing, and I said, "Super, welcome home." So that's what built up that journey.
Wow, yeah. No, that's beautiful, and well done on everything you've achieved, and
thank you, Nick.
Thanks for all the insights. I think we'll do this again one day, because there's so much to cover, but I want to be mindful of your time.
Absolutely, and I do know that there's some amazing guys on your journey that I'll definitely connect you with, like some of my team who will just give you far better insight, and who are brilliant, like you said, Peter, Kim, Dr. Matara. I've got some brilliant guys for you guys to connect for future podcasts.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Wayne.
Thank you, buddy. Cool.
Cheers.
Thanks, Nick.